Yes.
And he was here in this building last April on Good Friday. And the Lord touched him. And so we thought it would be kind of a fun way to start this conference, to do a short interview with him. And so with that in mind, I've got a couple of questions. Dustin, first of all, just tell us, what disease were you healed of?
They said I had MS, multiple sclerosis.
Multiple sclerosis.
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of your disease, how it came on you, how you found out you even had it, what was going on in your life?
I've been very busy at work. I'm bivocational, and I planted a church in Maryland called the Tapestry Church, where I had been senior pastor. And sorry, I don't talk like this usually, but God is very much in this room. It's been a long time, so I'm trying.
We're in favor of chicken waffles.
Yeah, right. We're all easy now. So I also work for a financial firm, and I got to sit down. Called Burt Wealth Advisors, and I work with a few other firms as a IT director, and so that's 4 firms I'm IT director over. And back then I was just working on taking the firm through a rebrand, and it was very stressful taking a very high-level financial firm that's for high-net-worth individuals in the DC metro area through a rebrand. And so it got very stressful. I was working late hours and also continuing with the church and doing everything I could to raise up the team and grow the church. And at this point, I think it was 7 years old. And there's just a lot of stress involved. And so one day while I was sitting at my computer, the doctor said it's due to the stress and probably age and genetic predisposition. But while I was sitting at my computer, I went blind and had just a ridiculous headache and just kind of became very disoriented and couldn't get my bearings. And I immediately called out for one of my associates and said, Merle, I can't see. And so she yelled back, she said, are you okay? And I said, I don't know. I have a very bad headache. And she said, maybe it's a migraine, you should go get something for it. Well, I stood up and I still couldn't see. And so I was just trying to get my bearings, and a couple of moments go by, and my right eye came back, and my left eye did not come back at that point. And it didn't come back fully after that, but it was still down, so I couldn't see from my left eye. I could see at this point from my right eye, it was blurry. And I thought, well, maybe I've just had a really bad migraine. And I went and got an aspirin, which was probably a really good thing to do. And at that moment, I didn't realize, but I'd had a stroke-like event. And it was the onset of the disease, and I had multiple lesions, one really bad lesion on my back of my brain, and then a lot of smaller lesions on the frontal lobe from what they saw in the MRIs just after. So that was the onset. And so I called my wife that day and said, Lori, I don't think I can drive home just yet. It may take a while. I'm not sure what's going on, but I don't feel so good. And she wanted me to go to the hospital, but grew up on a farm, so I did not go to the hospital. And I said, oh, it's okay, I can work it off. And I waited it out, drove home, and we kept it quiet for a while. But immediately at that point, I lost half my vision in my left eye. I had lost my peripheral vision, which is still at this point not back. And that's the only thing that I can say is not back. But then I lost, I had paralysis on the left side. And so when I got home, immediately I noticed as I tried to walk up into my house, I usually step up with my left foot first at this point because way back when I was in high school, I was a kicker in football, and that was how I stepped out kicking. And so when I went up to step up on the stair, I caught my foot on the step and fell forward into the door. And I just tried to work on past it and immediately lost most of my strength on my left side. I wear this ring still, and it says, all things through Christ my strength. Yeah, and that became the motto for many months and about a year as I went through this. And so I got that ring because the doctor said it was a good idea to have the ring, because one night my daughter was falling off the couch and I grabbed her with my left hand, which was my practice, and I couldn't feel her and grab her, and I had lost a lot of feeling in my left hand, and I dropped her on her head. And so felt it just tore me up, and I went to bed that night just so upset that I lost all this. And then I just went through a lot of loss. So, and then there was the beginning of deterioration in my spine. They said that I had 4 discs, I guess, that were deteriorating at that point. So, all right.
So that's how it started.
Yes.
And I just want to clarify one thing. You said you called your wife and called her Lord?
Lori.
Oh,
Lori.
Okay.
She gets the same thing sometimes. I pray out loud, and I'm like, Lord, fix this. And she goes, I can't do that. And I'm like, no, not you, Lord, duh.
Lord God.
Lord. Okay, so once you knew something was wrong, you told me that you'd gone through 3 stages in the progression of the disease. Can you tell us briefly what each of those 3 stages were?
Well, in the progression of the disease, of course, they find out that you have all this stuff in your blood that says you have an autoimmune disorder. So for anybody that's been through an autoimmune disorder, has anybody been through an autoimmune disorder and you're currently in the middle of dealing with one? It's pretty bad stuff because your body's attacking itself. And so your blood's all out of whack and levels aren't right. And they say you need to get all this stuff in your system. And so my levels were way out of whack. And then at that time they found out that I was, borderline for a lot of things. I was about 40 pounds heavier, and I had high blood pressure at that point, and I was borderline for diabetes and a couple other things they found, and just my blood was all out of whack. So that first period, they were finding out, everything about just all this stuff that was out of whack. During this process, we didn't know it, but we've had multiple people pray for us. And in that first stage, whenever they were going through the process of figuring out what this was and saying it was an autoimmune disorder, that there was something wrong here in the family of MS or whatever, and then I had white matter disease in my brain, where your brain is deteriorating, the white matter is dying. So if anybody knows about folks that have autism or Alzheimer's, that's what's going on. The neural pathways are dying, the white matter's dying, where everything talks in your brain. And so they stated on some of my write-ups that I had that. And in that first stages, we'd gone and had a lot of folks pray for us. I'd gone to IHOP, and folks had called me out of the crowd and prayed for me, didn't even know anything about this, and folks had prayed for us. And we didn't know this, but before we got here, folks had been praying. The blood tests that we had that we didn't know about when we came here were already starting to come back clear with levels right. So that was the beginning. Still had paralysis, still had lesions on the brain, but that was the first thing we found out after the fact as things started to come back in, and we looked at dates and times.
Now you're talking about getting blood tests back, so you have a baseline of data
Yes.
that confirms where you were, where you got to, and then as you got healed, kind of how that looked. Who was tracking that data? Is that a credible organization?
Yes, absolutely. Good. Thanks, Ken. I'm going to forget this stuff. Georgetown University Hospitals.
Is that a 4-year university?
Very good school. And so the gentleman that was working with me at this point was a doctor, Dr. Mora, who is, I believe he goes between there and Johns Hopkins and works with MS. And he's the lead doctor for MS and this kind of thing at Georgetown University Hospitals.
Okay, so you're under care at Georgetown while all this was going on.
And so we had many blood tests at this point. We had gone months. Actually went from, I believe it was August until December, the end of December, and I told my wife I didn't want to tell the church heading into the holidays because I didn't want to know. So I had been setting up and tearing down with the church. Some of my guys were about it. They know I did this. And just kept going like a whatever for Jesus, a soldier, and doing this stuff. And then in January, we let the leadership start to know and told the church what was going on with me and started asking folks to step up. So we'd gone through a lot of testing before the church even knew, and then we had, over this time, 3 sets of MRIs, many sets of blood tests, so much blood taking, it's unbelievable. You guys who are going through these things, they just keep taking. They never give back. So there was the blood test, the MRIs, and then EKGs, all the other tests. Actually, I led my EKG tech to Jesus because she told me to talk while she did the testing. I said, talk about what? She said, anything. I said, how about Jesus? By the time I got done, she came around and she said, you've been the face of God to me. I'm going back to church. I love Jesus. And she left New Age right on the spot.
So
Really?
Just to be clear, that was an electrocardiogram or an EEG and electroencephalogram?
Oh, EKG was first, and then the EEG was second.
You had
Thank
both
you.
of them?
Had both, yeah. They had to check all of my stuff to make sure everything was working right, heart and everything else, and then they came back and they did all the stuff where I was attached to my head, so I guess that's the EEG and everything, yeah. So it was the EEG tech, it wasn't the EKG, thank you.
That's fine.
It was good.
Just asking questions. All
He's the guy
right.
that
So we
ran
found out
the
about blood tests, paralysis, brain lesions, and then
Yes.
how did the healing finally happen? What was the decisive triggering event?
You know, it's a funny thing because you grow up in church and you do church and you kind of expect certain things to be certain ways, and sometimes it's just not. And so we were going through a healing process, I guess you could say. So the initial was the blood test coming back, but I still had paralysis and lesions on the brain. I came here and was with you guys. I still had paralysis. And I got to tell you, it's been a long time since I've been in such a vibrant crowd in church and worship. And so I'm sitting in the back going, okay, I like this. And my daughter is wanting to jump in and dance with everybody. And so I'm like, there you go. So we come up at the end, and it was a very long ministry time. We were here for a while, and then my wife encouraged me to stay.